All right, this is section 3. I'm doing this for myself so that I can tell which video is which. This is section 3 of 3 short mini lectures on ethics for people in the licensing program for local ministry in the Rio, Texas conference in the United Methodist Church. So if you're just coming in and you do not know why you're watching this video, you should go back and watch the first 2 videos first. And I should repeat again, I am not giving a series of mini lectures for everyone, everywhere. I'm giving a series of lectures specifically for this constituency. Hopefully there'll be something for people who stumble upon this, but I do want to note that I'm not trying to give a lecture on ministry in general or ethics in ministry everywhere. I'm specifically trying to give a series of lectures that will be helpful for people going into local church ministry through this particular program in the Rio, Texas conference. Okay, so I ended the last segment with a amusing and negative story about a United Methodist Church. I could tell you lots and lots of reasons why that church was a real gift to me when I was about 20. I'm trying to remember, I was about 20 years old when I was working there and wasn't sure. I was pretty sure I didn't want to go into the ministry. 80% sure. But I want to tell you a story that's very recent in the congregation that I am a part of here in Durham, North Carolina. So I have been now a part of Trinity United Methodist Church in downtown Durham since 1999 when I came on faculty at Duke. It's the longest I've been connected to any local church because I itinerated with my family because my dad was a United Methodist minister. And so I was a part of many, many churches before I went off to college. And then I was connected to congregations in college and also throughout my graduate work in Boston, in New Haven, Connecticut, in Atlanta when I was in college. Trinity is the congregation I've been a part of for by far the longest. It's my oldest church family. And it is a downtown church. I could tell you lots of beautiful stories about this congregation. I mean, I'll tell you a recent one. A recent one is so I have to go backwards. I have to go backwards a bit, but when my daughters, I'm a single mom of 2 now grown daughters, but then my daughters were, let's see, this would have been, Rachel was about 10. Yeah, Emily was about 4, something like that. So this would have been about 15 years ago, something like that. I'm trying to think. Yeah, somewhere around there. Sorry for that. So I should have written this down, but it doesn't matter. We were in Wales. I was in Wales doing research. You don't need to know all that. But this little Church of England church that was next to the residential library we were a part of in Harden, I'm going to say it wrong, Harden, Wales. This little Church of England church, it's actually an absolutely beautiful Church of England church. I say little because it was cozy. It was so intimate. And my dogs are barking. Ignore them or enjoy them. But we walked into that church the first time we went to go worship there, and they had a section not at the very back of the church, but they had a section for children close enough that people who were coming in the main doorway would see this space designated specifically for children, for babies, for their families. And the people who were greeting us were so excited that we were coming with children, and they showed us to the space, only if we wanted to be in that space. But of course I was like, yes, yay. And I came back to Trinity after being in Wales, in Harden, Wales. Sorry, folks, if you're hearing this in Wales. I came back from that church, being a part of that church for about a month or so, with this vision for Trinity United Methodist Church that we would be able to do that, because it was really important that we have space in this incredibly formal sanctuary. Every sanctuary has its challenges. Trinity United Methodist, that's the building, we have a challenge in that it's very formal. Some people are drawn to that, but many people with children found it intimidating. I know I did. And so I came into the back, this was again like a long time ago when my children were little. I came back with this vision of how we could do this in the sanctuary at Trinity, and I told the adult Sunday school class I was a part of at the time, which included people who were in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I was so excited. I told people, I told the minister at the time, I told two, I think, of the carpenters in the congregation who I knew could build really beautiful furniture that could go in that section of the sanctuary. Okay, I gave up. I didn't give up. I kept bringing it up periodically. I would put it on the form when they'd ask, what are some of your things you would like to change? And I then pretty much did give up. And I walked into the sanctuary, was it about 18 months ago, 2 years ago maybe? It seems like it was yesterday though, because I walked in and there it was. They had done it. Like somehow it had happened. So it had taken over a decade. So what I called that was, it was a slow moving miracle. It was a very slow moving miracle. And one of the lessons I've learned in my own ministry, and as I've taught people in ministry, and as I watched the decades of my father's ministry, is that you're going to have to be patient. Ethics can't be a side hustle, and ethics can't be an adventure that you're facing in a time of crisis when you have something like the trolley problem. Ethics is the everyday showing up, attending, listening, getting to know the people in your congregation, getting to know the people in the neighborhood around your church building. It is slow, tedious work. It is not heroic work. It is not adventurous work. And if you're thinking that your main work of ministry is going to be your 15 to 20 minutes in the pulpit, I have very bad news for you. If you do not spend time with actual human beings these days on the phone, soon, hopefully in person, if you don't spend time with actual human beings in the neighborhood that your church is in, and with actual parishioners, and not just those that count by some actuarial version of ministry, unless you spend time with real people in your congregations who do not count, then you are not going to say anything people are going to hear in your sermon. You can give a beautiful, you can speak with the tongues of Adam Hamilton. But a whole other, don't get me started there. But you can speak with the tongues of the best-selling Cokesbury author at our time, whoever it was 10 years ago, whatever, like fill in the blank. You can speak with all of the flourish or the whatever happens with that. But if they don't think you love them, if they don't know that you care about them, actually them, then they're not going to hear you. They'll be reading the hymnal and probably getting more out of it. So hopefully that wasn't too snarky. Hopefully you don't think I'm stepping on your toes. I don't know any of you in particular that I know of, but I will say that a real challenge I've seen people face as they're going into the ministry is the sense that they're excited most about what they're going to tell people from the pulpit, what they're going to tell people, how they're going to kind of get people into shape. So sometimes that's combined with the desire to be the beloved parent or the beloved older sibling or whatever family system you're bringing into the family system that is a congregation. But if you're going to have to reset your sense of time such that you are going to be trifling. And I will say that this is one of the challenges in United Methodism, is where we ask this of you. We ask that you're going to spend time with the children, and we ask you to promise that you are not going to trifle your time. Well, if you're going to spend time with children, actual time getting to know their names and who they are, not just what bow they have in their hair and how much their parents give, you're going to have to trifle your time. So yeah, trifle your time with people who do not count in the actuarial system where the fish is rotting from its head because the bishops are playing a game of baseball cards with the numbers. So risk trifling your time. And if you have in your community, if you have in your region even, the ability to be with ministers who are in other systems, not United Methodist, where you can sit together and encourage one another to waste your time. There's a book about worship by a woman named Marva Dawn called A Royal Waste of Time, and the book is about worship, and ministry is often about a royal waste of your time. And if you're going to stay engaged and patient with the work of ministry, you may need friends. I will say, in many contexts, you will need friends who are not United Methodist, who are in other forms of ministry, so that you can help one another keep perspective, so that if you start getting dashboarded or whatever version of that's going on in your conference, you can resist that push to be somehow accountable to the counting and have yourself thinking about your time that way. Okay, some other suggestions for being ethical as a minister in the United Methodist local church. So it's not heroic. It is about being slow and patient. It is not about counting. It is also, at our best, it should not be about competition. And given the fish rots from the head version of the hierarchy across United Methodism, please don't hear me saying something in particular about Rio, Texas. I'm not. I don't want you to get the illusion that this is somehow I'm talking about the Rio, Texas conference in particular. Across United Methodism, I'm serving in North Carolina, so I know people who are Methodists from across the whole country. So if you are going to resist the fish rots from the head actuarial version of congregational accountability, you're going to need to shut out some voices of colleagues in your own network, in your own district. You're going to have to, when you hear somebody bragging about how many people are watching their Zoom sermon, you're going to have to say, bless you, in your head. There's a Rage Against the Machine song that has a refrain that goes, something, something, I won't do what you tell me. And I have changed that in my head to, bless you, I won't do what you tell me. You may have to cultivate the ability in your own soul that when someone is bragging about their own baseball cards, you can say in your own, the core of who you are, bless you, I'm not going to do what you're doing. Bless you, I'm not going to think of my own ministry in terms of counting the numbers of eyeballs on a screen or ears listening to the podcast or whatever. So bless you. I won't do what you tell me. Bless you. I will not think of my ministry in this way. And if you need to say that to somebody in person, maybe you can remember how to say bless you. I won't think like you're thinking, and let them sort that out in their own soul. But please just know you may have to, if you're going to resist a culture, an unethical, amoral culture of actuarial counting, you're going to have to turn off some voices. And if that never happens to you, if you never have to turn off that voice because you don't hear it, great, that's fabulous. But if you do encounter this, just know you're not alone, and hopefully you will have assembled or you will seek friendships with people who aren't encouraging you to think in that way. Okay, some other really basics. So this is a real basic. In addition to bless you, I won't hear your voice in my head, and remembering that ethics in the ministry is a daily practice. It is a daily show up, non-heroic, not a side hustle thing. So here are some other basics, and these may be more challenging in some ways. So in normal times, when we are not going through the plague of 2020, I highly recommend you ask people in your congregation to form a really dorky, old-fashioned Bible study where you have people with old-fashioned Bibles, not newfangled translations. And here's where I may be meddling, but I'm going to just risk meddling with y'all. I recommend having several different translations and some really dorky old reference books for looking up particular biblical terms, sitting together, going through the Bible line by line, word by word, doing word study together. And this can be where 2 or 3 are gathered. You do not, again, don't think in actuarial terms about who counts. Having some group in your congregation who are going to be thinking biblically along with you while you're trying to preach will mean you'll have people who are going to help you think about your sermons and help you think and connect the scripture to what you are preaching and what you're teaching in the congregation. And you will find it's there. One of the things that when some students will say to me, but there's got to be one clear meaning to this particular parable or whatever, I ask them to think about the women in their lives who are older, who have Bibles that they've kept all their lives, that have writings in the Bibles. You will know women like this. And I'm sure there are men like this too, but all the people I know that I can think of who have Bibles like this, actually my dad probably has Bibles like this, but Bibles where they've written notes to themselves. Do you think that those people are writing notes to themselves because they think they're going to find the one clear meaning of that Bible verse? No, they're having an ongoing conversation with Scripture that lasts their entire lifetime. Find those people in your congregation, even 1 or 2, and ask them to sit together and facilitate. Disciples Bible Study was built on that kind of model, but I know not everybody has the time and resources to do Disciples Bible Study through the Disciples Bible Study program, but I do recommend it if you can. But you can also take the best that Disciples Bible Study has to offer and encourage people in your congregation. Even a small group can be like yeast, like salt in the congregation, to help people ask biblical questions, ask questions about the real words of Scripture. And it's cheating if you only do the Psalms and the Gospel of John. You actually have to, yeah, and only a certain set of Psalms. Like you actually have to pick some of the really like difficult, we're really going to read this, books of the Bible. It's part of what the lectionary is to have Methodists do, is we're supposed to be reading closely all the different parts of the Bible, and they don't speak with one voice, even though they're all holy. Okay, so also another helpful tip that I have found to be crucial to many people in the ministry that I've taught and learned from in my 25 years or so of teaching ethics to people preparing for ministry is a weekly meal. And right now, part of what many of us are grieving is the lack of a weekly meal. But it does not have to be a fabulous meal. It can be something really simple. But eating together in some way together each week. And eventually we will be able to do that again together. But a weekly meal, and I highly recommend, and I am not alone, there are people with fancy hats who you might or might not trust more than me think this. We're supposed to be having weekly communion. John Wesley thought we should be having frequent communion, and he argued with people about this because some people said that if we do it too often, it'll get to be commonplace. Wouldn't it be lovely if your congregation so memorized the liturgy for Holy Communion that it's going through their head all week? I mean, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? Instead of a Taylor Swift song, or I don't know, I love Randy Travis, but I don't like Taylor Swift. No offense to Taylor Swift, I just find her lyrics annoying. But wouldn't it be great if the liturgy of Holy Communion if that was so rote in your congregation's memory that it became commonplace? May it be so that the liturgy becomes commonplace. So I would recommend, in addition to a weekly meal, weekly Holy Communion, and risk not getting it all right. It makes some of us nervous to do it because we're afraid we're going to get the liturgy wrong. We're going to say a word wrong. Well, yeah, you will. Guess what? You're human. It's okay. Risk not getting it exactly right. Anybody who's going to cook for other people has to figure that out. Okay. Also, as I've said, really important to do the visiting of actual people in your congregation. And in community organizing, so I've trained in community organizing also. In community organizing, at least the form that I was trained in, it's really important not to mistake the obvious leaders of a congregation as being the people who will have the most practical wisdom, the most prudence, the most attention to detail that is crucial for understanding a congregation. So don't just look for the usual suspects. And in fact, don't look just for the usual suspects. Ask people you've come to trust who at the in-home care facility, who has left the congregation and can't drive to get back, who knows this congregation, who can help me understand radically, meaning in the roots, understand in a radical way what are the roots to this congregation. Y'all can't see me, I need to back up. What are the roots to this congregation? What's underneath this tree of life that is this congregation? You're gonna need to find people who can tell you stories, and the previous minister will only know some of them, and may only tell you some of them, and may tell you not the truth. Yeah, I've seen that happen before. So find people who aren't the usual suspects, because there are people with designated clear power. There are people who have knowledge, who have practical wisdom, who will not be designated as leaders. I asked the Sunday school class at Trinity United Methodist Church that I was teaching, and these were people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they gave me permission to tell this story. But I asked them one time, I was talking about the kind of anemic, I don't know what word to use, the myopic, the the not full, the limited, I'll just use that word, the limited way that people often think about church leadership. And I asked them to name leaders of Trinity United Methodist Church. Now, this was a group of men and women. They, I'll just cut to the chase. They named only men. And there were at least 3 women in that class who I would have definitely named as leaders at Trinity United Methodist Church. But they had a particular perspective on what a leader looks like. And so I would encourage you, as you go into a congregation, as you're part of a congregation, don't look for the usual suspects. Try to find the people who can help you and your leadership team understand the way the congregation has been functioning. You're going to also need to learn lots about your neighborhood. So you are going to be having to be heroic, but it's going to be the kind of heroism that involves showing up every day and learning and receiving the practical wisdom from other people around you. Okay, I think at this point, that's what I have to give, because I am just about to go over time again. So I will stop there. I've got lots more. I wish I were in person and teaching, because then I could hear your questions and I could have seen your facial expressions and paused and tried to answer more. But this is a series of 3. I'm finishing up my 3rd, and I'll say to be continued. And dang it, tears in the time of COVID. I wish I were with y'all. I wish I were seeing your faces. And I am really honored that you spent time hearing my words about the incredible calling that you are risking saying yes to in your ministry. I'll end before I actually make my mascara run on screen.